And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Whitney Anne Adams. She's a costume designer and stylist who's worked on internationally acclaimed films and a number of horror films on her resume, including Freaky, The Eyes of My Mother, Paranormal Activity, Next of Kin, Happy Death Day to You, and Christopher Landon's upcoming We Have a Ghost. And rumor has it she had Mary Poppins memorized by the age of 2. Welcome to the show!
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I sure did. I knew that whole movie by heart.
Did you really? By age of 2?
Basically, yeah. And I had a horrible British accent for almost a full year when I learned to talk. Like a really bad one.
How many times did you watch that movie?
Over 200,
oh my
I'm
gosh.
sure, when I was learning to talk. And then I later got to work for the costume designer, Tony Walton of Mary Poppins. And I have a picture of me when I'm 2 years old in a Mary Poppins costume my mom put together. So I got to give him a photo of that. So it's one of the greatest full circle moments of my life. And he passed away recently, which is a huge, awful bummer, but he was one of the greatest people I've ever known. So grateful for him.
Wow.
What a wholesome, beautiful story.
What a beautiful story. Oh my goodness.
Very lucky.
That is so cool. Wow. Wow. Okay, so let's transition to horror, though, and take it back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to the horror genre?
I think it happened really early. One of the first movies I saw, because my family were big film people, Alien and Jaws were 2 of my first movies.
I'm wearing my Alien shirt.
Yep. One of my very first movie experiences, and I just sort of fell in love with from there. And then I remember when, in elementary school you had to do, reading, and you got gold stars if you read a ton of books. Well, I just read every single teenage slasher novel there was. And so it was so many that my teachers called a parent-teacher conference with my parents to be like, should we be worried about her? And my parents were
That's incredible.
They were like, well, she's reading, right? What's the issue?
That's awesome.
No issue.
She's okay.
She's fine.
I was the same way in 7th grade, reading the Christopher Pike novels.
Oh, all of them,
and I was like, everyone's reading other stuff, and I'm like, I want the Christopher Pike novel about this vampire lady. And I'm just ripping through those during reading. Yeah, it was the best.
That was my gateway into all of it. And then since we were such a big movie family, I got a job in high school just so I could go buy movies and a TV. So that's why I got a job.
Look, we all have different motivations, and that's a very good motivation.
I'm all on board with that motivation.
That's part of the reason why I have a job now.
Yes.
Gotta
get more movies.
Fill those cabinets somehow, right?
Gotta fill those cabinets. Gotta eliminate all cubic feet in my home with just Blu-rays.
Anyway. I had 500 DVDs by the time I graduated high school. Dang. It was something insane like that. And so I watched all the behind-the-scenes features, which made me fall in love with horror and all of the makeup and all the behind-the-scenes stuff. And I remember pouring into every single one that I could. And I think that's what helped me get into the career I have now.
Hell yeah. Do you remember how old you were when you saw Alien? Because that's a Scar for Life moment.
Yeah, I think I don't remember. I think I was probably 7.
Okay.
So pretty, on the younger side. But I think still, you guys have covered this, but the scariest movie I saw growing up was by far Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh.
I still can never watch that movie ever again. It's the scariest thing I've ever seen. And that's saying something.
That movie, it's funny how certain movies that are not considered, horror can still have such a lasting effect on you. Because that movie, for sure, it's weird that
body horror.
Yeah, absolutely.
1000% body horror.
Absolutely. But you get movies like Alien that's terrifying and all that kind of stuff. And then there's always that one movie that is this should be fine. And you watch it, it's oh, this is not fine.
This is not okay. That is a triggering movie for me. I will never see it again.
Okay, so your family sound like you said that you watched a whole lot of movies. What were some of your favorite in the horror that you would go to and rewatch? Maybe not as much as Mary Poppins, but rewatch a whole lot as a kid.
As a kid, I'm trying to think of, I was 11 when Scream came out.
Oh,
and that
okay.
by far is my favorite horror movie. Scream is it for me. I love all horror movie across all of the decades, but like Scream is very much my favorite horror movie. So I rewatched that over and over and over again. And as the sequels came out, I think the first DVD I bought, because I started buying VHSs, and the first DVD I bought was Scream 3.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
that's awesome.
I just kept rewatching the trilogy all the time. I just rewatched it last week, literally, because I was doing work for my new movie I'm working on, and I was gathering images on the internet. So I'm like, let me just put the whole trilogy on. Or, there's 5 now.
Right.
What's your Scream ranking?
Oh, that's a very good question. We'll start with Scream, the 1996. And then I love the movie within the movie quality of Scream 3. So I'm going to go Scream 3 next.
Wow, okay.
I love Scream 3. I love Scream 3. I know it's not what people normally do.
I respect it.
Yeah.
No, I respect it a lot.
I don't know why Scream 3 I think is just a great movie for me. I'll rewatch that more than I think I'll rewatch any of the other ones besides the first one. And then I loved this new one that just came out. It's hard to sort of rank the rest because I love Scream 2. I mean, it's tough. I have to really think about that. They're all good for me. I do.
It's like, I feel like no rank is like they all are so good. It's hard to rank them because you're like, I enjoy them. Like none of them are bad. Like,
and they're all different. They're all extremely different.
Yeah.
So it depends what mood you're in. If I'm in the mood for, funny, meta, super meta, then I'll go with Scream 3. If I want classic, I go with the first one, all depends what I'm feeling.
I love that. So you watched a whole lot of movies, it sounds like, as a kid. Did movies scare you? Did you get scared easily as a kid?
Not really. I think there was a couple moments stuck with me, but not a movie on a whole. I think the scariest thing besides Willy Wonka was Last Crusade, when Donovan ages really, really fast.
Yeah.
That I saw that really young as well. And it stuck in my mind. Again, I'm a very visual person, being a costume designer. The visuals just stuck with me, and I could not fall asleep at night unless over and over I repeated, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to me. I did that for 6 months.
Holy shit.
It affected me that intensely. So.
Holy cow.
And that just is a testament to the design of that, special effect. And
it's a great special effect.
It's incredible. I mean, I remember as I got older, I pored over how they did the reverse, filming of it and how they pulled the hair. I love it.
Fantastic.
That's amazing. And so were you easily scared as a kid? Like, was it easy to get under your skin?
Yeah, pretty easy to get under my skin. I mean, especially a jump scare still gets me to these days, or I'm still scared of the dark. I will freely admit it. If there's a dark warehouse I have to go into for work, I always make sure to turn all the lights on as quickly as possible. So I definitely think I watch so many horror movies and I love the feeling of getting scared, but also it appears in my day-to-day life because of that.
So I was going to ask, so as an adult, do you still get scared?
Oh, totally.
Do movies scare you at all?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah.
More so than as a kid, or about the same?
I think about the same.
Yeah.
I think because each story is new and you don't know what's going to happen, and with how amazing the design and the score and everything together, it really creates quite a mood. And I'm, again, such a visual person. I get pulled into that story. And I'm not a person who's trying to figure out what is going to happen next. I'm very much living in the moment. And because I'm living in the moment of every frame of the movie, it scares me more.
Yeah. Do you remember like the last film that kind of brought you back to being a kid, or that kind of made you feel like you were a child again in terms of like the horror elements, or something that absolutely terrified you?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I'm trying to think of like the scariest thing that I've seen recently. Oh man, that's a hard question. I'm not sure if I have a good answer right now.
No problem. Putting you on the spot.
Yeah. Yeah, what's the thing that like got under my skin recently? I think there was some elements of the Black Phone that really got under my skin. And there's still plenty of new releases that I haven't seen yet, so I'm a little behind in my movie watching. But it's been a minute. But I'll think about that. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. We always throw people on the spot, and it's always like, decision paralysis. But what are some of your favorites as an adult? Some of your favorite horror movies?
I love. Do you say Midsommar?
Either one.
I say
Midsommar,
but yeah.
Perfect. Midsommar. Yeah. I think that is so terrifying, especially because it's so much daylight and there is no shadows or darkness to hide behind, and it's sort of the cruelty and the ugliness is so on display, and I think that's somewhat more terrifying because it's not hiding, it's very much out in the open. And also that movie is just stunningly beautiful.
Oh, it is so beautiful. And the thing is, I was just thinking about this as you were talking. I love the director's cut of it because I think it adds a little bit more context to some of the things that happen. But one thing I don't like is that it has a shot at nighttime because it breaks up that feeling of all oppressive daylight that I think is so powerful in that film. And it's like this one moment of nighttime and I'm like, I wish that was kind of left on the cutting room floor.
I definitely agree with that. Like, I do love the director's cut. And again, I'm a person who wants more, not less. Like, I want to see more of the story. And every time I design a movie, there's always scenes that end up being cut. And I'm always bummed because I'm like, oh, that was a good scene. I wish that would have stayed in. I understand running time and, keeping the pacing. But I'm a more is more kind of person.
So you kind of mentioned how you got interested in behind the scenes work in horror, but I want to hear more about how you got into costume design and kind of how you came to become a costume designer.
It should have been a no-brainer for me, but I actually went to college for pre-med, or at least initially.
All right.
Yeah. I know. I got really sick in high school and I was in the hospital, in and out of the hospital a lot, and I had to get a bunch of organs taken out. It was a whole situation.
Oh, wow.
But I had the surgeon who saved my life, and I always loved biology and science, and then physiology was my favorite class, the study of the body. I study the body in a different way now, so I see how it sort of relates, but that was sort of what I went into school doing. And I'd taken drama in high school. I was a horrible actor. I had horrible stage fright. I was like, I like this world, but I am not good at the acting side. And so I took like all of my science classes first quarter of college, and my one fun class was Intro to Theater Design. And within 3 weeks, I changed my major. I made a PowerPoint to show to my parents to be like, I'm changing my major to theater, and my life is going to be really hard, but I'm ready. And how could they argue with the PowerPoint presentation?
I mean, you can't.
You can't.
Yeah.
You're like, I made the fucking PowerPoint. There's no way to argue me out of this situation.
Exactly. And they were
it's been decided.
Okay. They shrugged and like, go for it. Very grateful for my parents.
I have a question. Okay, so intro to theater design, was that like all aspects of theater design, or was it like set design, or how, what? It
was everything. It was sort of like the general intro class, and I thought, oh, I love theater. And it's just all sort of clicked. I can't really explain why I just honed in on costumes, and that was that. It was like one of 3 decisions in my life that I can't really explain why I knew it was right, but I just knew that was it, and I never looked back. And I think now looking back on it, when I was really sick in high school, I watched the movie Moulin Rouge every day for like 6 months.
Talk about costume design.
I also watched that movie all the time in high school, and I, for no other reason other than both I was gay and straight and wanted to do something like that someday.
That, I think looking back now, that movie is a huge part. Like the visuals are everything. And then I, got to work for Catherine Martin and Baz Luhrmann for a long, long time, many years. And so getting to tell them how much their movie, 1, saved my life emotionally when I was in high school and maybe dying. And then 2, led me on the path I'm on now. So I'm very grateful for that movie and for them.
Wow.
What a powerful moment to be able to tell them that.
It's one of the most special things that's ever happened to me. I'm very grateful that I got to tell them that they really did save my life. When you're spiraling and sick and not knowing what's going to happen and you have an escape. I mean, that's why I love making movies, is that, maybe it just takes 2 hours out of someone, distracts them from whatever's going on in their life. And, it either scares them or excites them or makes them feel some kind of emotion. But I like that it's a nice break from our reality for a couple hours.
Yeah. So how did you get involved with working in movies?
Well, I graduated, with a theater degree, moved to New York. And this ties into Baz and Catherine. I entered this costume design contest that they were having as part of this promotional series for the movie Australia. They had all these Apple podcasts where they did like a 10 minutes behind the scenes, directing behind the scenes, costume design. And they had a couple of contests attached to them. Well, I entered the costume one. I won the whole contest. I won a trip to Australia. And through all these crazy events, I ended up working for them for 3 weeks, which then turned into however many years now that I've done.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Because of a podcast.
Yeah. Because of a podcast. Yeah.
See, everybody, podcasts are important.
Yeah, they're very important. That podcast changed my life in that contest. And then, my first movie was The Great Gatsby.
Holy crap.
What a cool first movie.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I was on that for a really, really long time, over a year. And then getting to create, I remember when we were filming the first party scene, and it was the first time we were seeing everyone in costume on set, and they all started dancing. They started our tempo track, because we didn't have the music yet, our tempo track was LMFAO's Party Rock Anthem.
Oh my God.
So everyone's doing the Charleston to Party Rock Anthem, and I am bawling. I am crying to Party Rock Anthem.
What a juxtaposition.
So every time I hear that song, I get back to that emotional state of seeing all those clothes together for the first time. So
how bizarre. The Charleston is happening. LMFAO is playing. You're crying. Like, what a
time. I'm wearing 3D glasses because we're filming in 3D.
Oh,
so
shit.
I have and so just tears underneath all of it. Yeah, it was quite a time in my life.
Holy
And that's
cow.
when I knew that I wanted to do film for the rest of my life. And then I met Christopher Landon, and I've always, both Nick Pesh and Christopher Landon, my two amazing collaborators who I've worked with a bunch. I love them both so much, and they make such different horror movies, and I love all the things we get to do together because it's incredible. So
I was really excited when I saw that you had worked on The Eyes of My Mother, because that movie was like a gut punch of what the fuckery. And
yes.
and he makes such interesting movies. Like, I saw you worked on that one as well as Piercing, and Piercing I think is a fantastic like Neo Giallo type infused madness inducing film. And I'm just What was it like working with him on those movies and designing costumes?
I love Nick. Nick is one of my favorite people. I love him so much. He's like such a positive, wonderful, warm person who makes these like fucked up movies. And I just love it. It's such a juxtaposition to him in real life. And, his imagination is insane. And he's got such a visual language. He and I were able to talk and be on the same page every step of the way. His dad was a fashion designer and a costume designer.
Wow.
And so he grew up with that sort of language. And so we knew from the get-go what we wanted, especially, so Eyes of My Mother was the first movie I ever designed myself. And so that was a big deal for me. And also black and whites.
I was going to say, I bet it was difficult too, because it's black and white. And so how do you go about designing when it's, shades of different colors? I had my phone. I had a black and white app on my phone. So when I would go shopping, I picked the filter. I talked to our DP Zach, and we picked the right filter that we wanted it to look like for the specific black and white. Then I just went shopping and to see what popped on camera and what had good contrast and what had. Okay. So I was looking for texture and high contrast and pieces that had multiple sort of style lines, so it wasn't just flat and wouldn't disappear. Wow.
But it was definitely a crazy process. But that movie I'm so proud of that movie. We made it for no money, but I wouldn't change a single thing. I'm so happy with it.
It's a beautiful movie. Like it's so gorgeous to watch, and yet so hard to watch.
Yes, there's a lot, and it's really, really hard to watch. I think because it really does crawl under your skin in such a really visceral way. And the performances are amazing. And I love that it's such a juxtaposition to what we did in Piercing. Like, Piercing is like a completely different movie with all of our Giallo references, and like it's very funny. It's a very funny movie.
It is.
And
it's so darkly comedic.
Yeah. And Eyes of My Mother is not funny at all.
Not a single moment of levity.
Not a single chuckle.
I think that's why it's so short, too, because we're like, we have no levity. It's very dark. You're going to have to deal with it. And then Piercing is just fun. And that was like such a stylized fashion movie.
Yeah.
So that was such a great time to do.
And then you got involved with Christopher Landon, and you've worked on a number of things that he's been attached to, with Happy Death Day to You and Freaky, and I think he wrote Paranormal Activity, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what was it like working on all these movies? And I mean, We Have a Ghost coming up too.
Yes.
What was it like going on this journey with Chris? Because I mean, that's sort of like his career trajectory and yours at the same time, almost, in a way.
Complete. I mean, Chris he's one of my favorite people on the planet. Remember I had my first interview with him for Happy Death Day to You. I was in Baz and Catherine's house for some reason. We were doing something, and I remember Zooming him from a closet somewhere. And we just had this amazing instant connection. And we're like, we had the same visual language. We have the same aesthetic with everything. And we're like, that was that. And then we had such a blast on Happy Death Day to You. And, I love that he's able to blend so many elements together.
Mm-hmm.
Happy Death Day to You was both horror and sci-fi and adventure and romance and comedy all in one, but it still works.
Yeah.
It has all these different genres, but he's able to blend them seamlessly together. And then Freaky, I love so much. That was such a blast. And that's more like slasher comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's so many sweet elements too, and it's really heartfelt, and it's not surface, it goes really deep. And that's what he writes, is strong characters, and again, a lot of strong female characters too, and I like that everything is purposeful, and it's really special. And then also Paranormal Activity is just scary. And also doing Amish, that was a whole adventure for me.
I wanted to ask about that experience, because it's Paranormal Activity in the snow with Amish cult stuff. So you've got period outfits in a contemporary movie. What was that experience like designing for that?
Well, we built everything from scratch, so that was all made for the movie.
Wait, the house and the barn and everything?
Well, all of my stuff was made from scratch, but the
your stuff,
house
sorry,
and barn were an existing. My stuff, no, the house and the barn were a real Amish farm, but the family had vacated, so it was a real Amish place. But our production designer, John Collins, did an amazing job building it out and making it look perfect for our world. And we want it to look sort of like they hadn't updated in years, because they're not going into town very often. Mm-hmm. They're trying to stay insular and still pretend that they're, Amish. We had to build all the clothes from scratch. That was a huge undertaking, especially because you can't just go buy Amish clothes anywhere.
Right.
You have to make them because they make their own clothes. And also everything is, there's a bishop who's in charge of the look of the entire community. And so I like to joke I was the only female Amish bishop that existed, that I got to decide, the exact look of this community. But it all had to be the same. And so you can't just buy that anywhere. So we had to build it all. So that was a huge challenge. And it is basically a period movie, but in contemporary time.
Okay, so Whitney, we have talked about your horror history, your incredible career, but what movie have you brought with you today for us to discuss?
I have brought Ghost from 1990.
Hell yeah. All right, so for those of you unfamiliar with Ghost, after a young man is murdered, his spirit stays behind to warn his lover of impending danger with the help of a reluctant psychic. So, Whitney, why is this your Star for Life pick? Tell us everything about it. How old were you when you first saw it? When did you first see it? What scared you the most about it?
I remember very specifically, I was 8 when I first saw it. We had the VHS from McDonald's. It was a 1993 special release where they sold Ghost at McDonald's, and it had the little McDonald's thing on the corner. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yes. Why would they sell that movie at McDonald's.
Holy shit, I remember that. This was like a huge deja vu moment for me. Oh my god.
Isn't that insane? So I remember taking the VHS out of the cover and it having the McDonald's logo. I remember seeing it with my best friend, and it was just the two of us, and we both realized it was like, oh, this is a very adult movie.
Yeah.
You might be too young. And for me, the reason I brought it is the scariest thing are those freaking shadow demons. They're the scariest thing, and they still stuck in my head all these years later. They're so terrifying. They still freaked me out yesterday when I rewatched the movie. It's like, I do not like this at all. They're so scary. And even though, you know, visual effects have come along so far, there's something about the choppy quality of it and the facelessness of them. They're just so scary.
The sound design too, the groans and the way they sort of like as they come into existence, and
you know that they made those by slowing down babies crying and playing it backwards.
No.
Yeah.
Did they really?
Yeah. But this is me who does all the behind the scenes digging all the time. But yeah, they slowed down babies crying backwards, which is why it sounds so horrifying.
That's sound design is so cool, but like
so cool.
that is such a gosh, because that moment, even though some of the effect it does look a little janky in some, I think Willie's is really good.
Yes.
I think the one where they're sort of dancing around Carl at the very end gets a little too much, but the sound design just like really brought me back to when I first saw it as a kid, for sure.
And tied in with that score by Maurice, I think it's Jarre, you say his last name? Like, he did Lawrence of Arabia, he did, you know, he has had 3 Oscars. Like, he did this insane score that was really terrifying, and it just leveled up all of the sort of action and spookiness and scariness, especially like the top of the movie.
This score is, it brought me back to being a child when I rewatched this movie, because I hadn't seen this movie since I was a kid, and we'll get into that story a little bit, but like this score brought me instantly back to that childhood feel, and it's both the score and also, of course, Unchained Melody, right? Because
yes, 100%.
Oh my god, are you kidding
what a beautiful
me?
song.
So gorgeous. And you know, like we've all heard that song everywhere, but it I always think about Ghost when I hear it, for sure.
Yeah, me too. So when I first saw this, I would have been about like 9 or 10, because it came out in 1990. So I would have, and I saw it on VHS. I know that for a fact. So I would have been like 9 or 10, I think, depending on when that VHS came out. And I remember kind of being bored by it as a kid.
Yeah.
Little kid, you know, boy, you know, like this is all a lot of smooching, a lot of like, you know. But then I also remember, there's a couple things I do remember. I remember the subway ghost.
Oh yeah.
Was absolutely creepy.
So scary.
The ghost at the end where it like takes a hard turn into kind of horror territory with the finale. I was like, ooh, this is actually really kind of cool. And then the other thing I remember was thinking that ditto meant I love you.
Right, yes, 1,000%.
And so I would go around saying ditto to my parents as if like I was saying I love you. Not like them saying I love you and then I said ditto. I would just be like ditto. Because I thought that meant I love you.
Cute.
That's adorable. I love that.
But that is literally all I remember about seeing this movie as a kid. And so rewatching it as an adult was quite an experience, because I thought the ghosts were more throughout the movie as opposed to like the demons, as opposed to being towards the very end of the film.
I think when I didn't know what to expect when I popped it in. You know, I just remember that iconic cover of the VHS, and you know, I was looking up yesterday the sort of back of the VHS, and it's really hilarious, sort of the description that they had of the movie. It was think of the most touching love story you ever saw. Think too of the brightest comedy, the most astonishing supernatural tale, and a sleek mystery thriller. Did you come up with 4 separate films? Or are you among the millions of fans and critics who've discovered Ghost?
Wow.
What? That's on the back of the VHS?
That's on the back of
That's
VHS. So
I mean,
when
like,
I
they're
read
not
that,
wrong.
how can I not pop that movie in?
Yeah.
They're not.
Like, they're
Maybe
not
a little
wrong.
bit of exaggeration, but how can you not watch the movie when you have that on the back of the VHS box? So
Instant attention getter.
I was like, yep, gonna pop that one in. And I just remember being so astonished by, one, the costumes, of course. It was before I became a costume designer, but, you know, Whoopi's iconic clothes and that shirt that Patrick Swayze wears, and he wears the hell out of those jeans. And, you know...
Girl.
You know, he's in one costume pretty much the whole movie, and it is a good one.
It is a good one. But so the costume that Whoopi wears when she goes to the bank is so good.
So good. It's phenomenal. And so the costume designer Ruth Morley, who did Ghost, it was her second to last film before she died.
Oh, geez.
She was under the tutelage of Edith Head. So she learned from Edith Head, who, you know, is one of the most prolific costume designer, who had, you know, had 8 Oscars and did a million movies. So that was an homage to Edith Head. That look very much was a lot of this throwback to like the 40s and those kind of shapes. And so there was also a resurgence of the 40s and in the 80s. So you sort of see a lot of these parallels and that color and the hat, and it's just so iconic. And it was made at one of the studios.
Wow. I was looking up Ruth Morley, and she's worked on some movies. Taxi Driver and Tootsie, Costume and Wardrobe for Superman.
She's also the one who designed Annie Hall, and that was probably one of her most iconic, you know, looks in all of costumes, especially a contemporary movie, to really have such a huge effect on modern fashion. I mean, Annie Hall was definitely a game changer. She, very prolific, amazing career.
Wow. I was going to ask, what, when did you first see this movie?
I'm trying to remember when I first saw this movie, because it was like the kind of movie that was always in my consciousness, but I can't remember the first time that I actually saw it. Like, I knew about it, but the thing I knew the most about it was the pottery scene, like the really sexy pottery scene, because I was like a horny little kid who loved sex scenes in movies. I was like trying to figure myself out. And that was one of the scenes that was just like, whoa. And so when we had a pottery wheel in high school, every time I'd stare at it, all I could think about was Ghost. But the thing is, I don't remember watching it I can never remember watching it all the way through. Like, I watched it for the first time all the way through today and was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I vaguely remember this, but I could not tell you when I first watched it, like, at all. Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember the ghost at the end? Or so when you say you don't know if you watched it all the way through, do you just mean like you watched only part of it, or?
Yeah, like, I don't know if I caught parts of it on TV. I think it was like something like I caught on TV kind of situation. But like, I didn't remember that there were like demons in this movie. Like, I did not remember that there were demons. I knew that there was like a mystery and that he was a ghost, but I forgot there was like a full on horror movie factor going on with like the creepy ass demons that like ate humans. I completely forgot that existed. So I was like, oh yeah, that's why this movie's so scary, huh?
Yeah, I never forgot those demons. Those demons were definitely a huge part. I saw, seeing it at 8, it definitely stuck with me for a really long time.
Well, and I think because they are, so backloaded in the film that like you sort of get wrapped up in this sweeping romance, mystery, sort of noirish type story. And then all of a sudden it like jackknifes into that territory, and it's the scene where Willie gets sandwiched by a truck in a car, which is like, holy crap. For a PG-13 movie, they sure do manage to get away with some nice cuts and stuff. So like,
exactly. You're like, oh my.
And at that moment when they all like when Sam says, "You're dead, Willie," and then they all just sort of like reverse babying sounds pulling him away. It's quite a scene.
And I think something that really adds to the effect, but beyond the music and the sound effects, is really the actors' reactions. I mean, especially when when Sam first gets killed, and just the look on his face when he sees his dead body. Same with Willie when he sees his dead body, just the horror and those wide eyes and how just terrified they are. I think that really adds to the scare factor because, you know, you put yourself in their shoes and just the full-on, their horror sort of matches.
There's a lot of eye acting in this movie.
So much eye acting. I think I was reading Patrick Swayze said it was the hardest thing he's ever had to act in because he was the observer and not the person doing any actions. And I was like, oh, that totally makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's. I think that would be really difficult because, you know, you can't interact with anyone on set and you're just, like you said, observing everything. So a lot of what you have to communicate to the audience is done through your physical, your physical acting. And that, well, he's really good in this.
So good.
I was going to say, he's so good in this movie. And like, I love their relationship from the very beginning. Like, they're so cute and sweet and tender, and they're always, and I think what makes the movie even sadder for me when he dies is like they're touching all the time in this movie. Like, they're always like, I mean, the pottery scene, but like he's always like hitting her, like, you know, smacking her on the butt, or like they're doing a small kiss. Like they're very intimate and in love with each other. And so when he's unable to touch her, it feels all the more upsetting. Like, you guys really were a very like touch oriented couple. And so having that inability makes it even more heart-wrenching to watch. I forgot how sad this movie was. Like, I got very devastating watching this movie.
It's a very melancholic film. Even before like stuff happens, because like there's a scene early on when Sam is, you know, he has a problem saying I love you, right? And and you can take it in a couple different ways, but really at the core of it, I don't think he's afraid of getting attached, because he says something where the line is, whenever anything good happens in my life, I'm afraid I'm going to lose it. And so we have that sort of hanging over this entire film. And then we also have them watching like the footage of the airplanes crashing, that there has been 2 recent ones. And he's like, oh, they always come in threes. Like, there's this sense of doom that is hanging over him, the relationship, everything from the very opening. I mean, the opening of the movie in itself is like, I was surprised at how much of a horror movie it leaned into at the very beginning, with like, there's the ghost is on with like this musical stinger that kind of is like a horror
scare
movie
from the beginning, like the jump scare of the titles. You're like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, I did too. I was like, oh, we're going horror like immediately,
like, oh
almost.
My goodness! And then starting with the slow pan and all the credits, and then you get.
Through the place that's eventually going to become their home, the warehouse, and it's like, what's going on here? It's like kind of creepy and dilapidated, and the walls break down, and then there's 3 very sexy people standing there, 2 of them shirtless. I'm gonna say Carl is ripped. Like, so that scene, ripped. I was like, oh, hello, like, Carl.
Oh, hi, Tony Goldwyn, and his like huge big break. They were trying to find I think a more famous actor, and then they just kept going back to his tape because he's that good.
He's very charismatic.
He's amazing. And it's funny to watch it now, you know, as an adult, to be like, oh, he was in his 20s when he filmed this. And that's insane, you know, to be so much older than that now as an adult.
He's the president in Scandal, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my point of reference.
Sure is.
Sexy fucking president in Scandal.
I have a fun so they did the Broadway musical version 10 years ago in 2012. They did a Broadway musical version of Ghost. And
did they really? I didn't know that.
They sure did. And the actor who played Carl on Broadway, I went to high school with. So
whoa, what?
He was like, yeah, he was in all of our musicals, like, in high school. And so I just love that the guy who played Carl on Broadway, we were in class together.
Good for him. From high school theater to Broadway.
Incredible. Yeah.
So this opening scene, though, also just is drenched with sexual tension.
Oh my God.
Like, I really just wanted all 3 of them to like just go off and bang.
Go have fun. Yeah.
Because like,
you can feel it.
Because, yes, obviously there is sexual tension between Carl and Demi Moore's character, Molly. Like, obviously he is lusting after her, but...
Quick side note, Demi Moore with short hair is so fucking hot. Anyway, back to him lusting after her.
She's gorgeous.
Oh,
she's gorgeous in this movie.
Seriously.
But like... I swear there's tension between Carl and Sam as well in this scene. Like, you have 2 shirtless men banging shit out of things. My kink. Like, just like, I'm like, okay. I I don't know if you watch TikToks at all, but there is his name's Thor, I think, and he chops wood.
Yes, I've seen
Oh my
these.
god, sorry. The guttural sound that just came out of my mouth about him.
Well, on oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I'm just thinking like that's the image I immediately had. I was like, yep, this is why I enjoy watching him chop wood.
Yeah, it's just like bang the shit out of that wall. Last night I was like posted, I was watching the movie on Instagram, and then I just literally the only other post to put up was the picture of all of them, like the two shirtless guys and Demi Moore. I was like, all right.
Hell yeah.
The bisexual dream right there.
Just a beautiful scene.
Beautiful gowns. Beautiful, beautiful gowns.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have to talk about the pottery scene.
Yes. Oh, 1,000%.
Oh my god.
Because again, the melancholic tone kind of continues on through this moment, because as much as I think Unchained Melody is a gorgeous song, it's also very kind of a sad song. Like the lyrics are, I've hungered for your touch a long, lonely time, and time goes by so slowly, and time can do so much. Are you still mine? I need your love.
Oh, God.
And it's like...
That's devastating.
It is. So like the lyrics of the song that they are like making love to the phallic pottery
Right.
is still so sad. It's so sad.
This movie is incredibly sad. And, you know, you get taken out of it with the burst of humor with Whoopi Goldberg sections, but then it easily slips right into it. You know, there was also a really sad costume moment that I thought Ruth did an amazing job with, was when Demi Moore's character goes to the police station to, you know, try to follow up on Willie Lopez. She's wearing the first shirt that Patrick Swayze wears in the movie when he goes to the office.
Really?
It's the same button-down striped shirt, like she's trying to get as close to him as possible.
Oh.
It's like devastating, and like it's a very subtle story plot line, but like that's what I love about costume design, is that you can sort of see her grief through clothes.
Wow. I didn't even realize that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
And
I didn't clock that at all.
when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, that's the same shirt, you know, cause she talks about picking up his dry cleaning too. And I liked that sort of connecting right before the pottery, or I mean, not like when she's at her potter's wheel later, but yeah.
Yeah. That's another like heartbreaking moment where she's like talking about going to pick up, you know, the dry cleaning, and Mr. Reynolds, I think is his name, you know, wants her to say hi to him. And it was like,
Devastating. It's a very
knowing
sad
that he is
movie.
like right there and they can't communicate at all.
Oh, it just hurts your heart. And I was like, ooh.
But Whitney, you brought up Whoopi Goldberg, and I want to talk a little bit about her. Because fuck, she's so fucking good in this movie. She's incredible. But I think what I love about Whoopi Goldberg's character in this movie especially is like, this is a movie about a couple of these two lovers who are separated by tragedy. And it is a movie about them, but then Whoopi Goldberg stands on her own and doesn't make it feel like cheap that it has these comedic moments. Like she balances kind of the tragedy and the comedy of it so well in this movie that makes her part feel so integral to the progression of the plot. Because I see a version of this movie where it's like, oh my God, this comedic relief is just kind of distracting us from this really upsetting love story. But I love how she brings it together and really strengthens the film. And fuck, she is such a star in this movie. I mean, good Lord.
I mean, there's a reason she won the Oscar. She's so incredible in this movie. And, you know, there's still, like, looking back on it now from a 2022 lens, you know, it's another film with the sort of magical African-American character. And, like, that's, you know, more problematic now. Well, problematic forever, but it's definitely like looking through it with a more modern lens and like, you know, like that's not great. She definitely does the best she can with this, you know, story. And she's definitely a Black woman helping two white people with their love.
I wanted to bring that up.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. The weird racial dynamics in this movie.
Yeah,
like,
very.
Because we're following two, obviously, they're obviously very well off, because I don't think anyone can afford that warehouse in a city
on a
He's a
Potter
banker,
salary.
you know.
I'm
exactly.
so sorry, but she ain't making jack shit with pottery. I love you, girl.
No.
I appreciate your art, but like,
Not
there's no
happening.
way.
So like they're of course incredibly privileged, and so we also have you know, contrasted with Whoopi Goldberg's character Oda Mae, who is like a con artist and has been in jail. And so there's definitely that sort of, there's a racial tension there as well. And the fact that she even gives up her body for these white people to like have this last moment is like,
those moments were tough to watch now.
It's kind of cringe.
It's definitely cringe. And she's incredible, and she does an amazing job in this role, and she's so funny, but that's still there, that cringe, that like, oof, they're making her do what? They're making this character do what? Yeah. Just yikes.
And I know it is a big moment for her, because obviously Academy Award winning from this, she's now an EGOT winner, so like there's all of that aspect to it. And it created this friendship between her and Patrick Swayze. And from what I understand, he was instrumental in her getting the role.
Yes. Yeah.
And he said that he wasn't going to do it if she didn't get it. And I do think there's a funny moment in the script though, because when they're at the bank and he's trying to coach her and he's telling her to go talk to Lyle, he says he could have had a conversation with Tina Turner and wouldn't remember. Tina Turner also auditioned for Oda Mae's character. And so I was like, oh, that's this little funny moment.
Wait, that's fucking incredible.
I just love that they had such a great friendship. That's so sweet.
Yeah. Lifelong friendship that lasted up until his death, unfortunately. But yeah, that's
wow.
It's difficult because like this movie did give her so much, and she acts the hell out of this role. She is so funny in it. Her comedic timing is on point. She creates this character to make it feel as if it is a full-fledged character and not just like the black friend that sort of props up the white people. She does give this character a lot more pathos and empathy than I think the role was probably written for. So like there's, it's like a dual-edged sword because it is incredibly cringe to watch this because it is a trope that still continues up to, when we did The Stand and she again is playing Abigail, so it's like, it's unfortunate, but also
she really made it her own, and she has agency and she has like her own wants, desires, and needs, and she really was the perfect person for this role, and she really absolutely, you can tell she's a star. She's a complete star. And so just watching her, it's incredible to watch.
It really is.
Speaking of her costume design too, like she has some incredible, I feel like the costume design, and again,
every look.
And I think there is, especially when she goes to the bank and she's not very the giant, I love that. And obviously it's supposed to be look, she's not rich. She doesn't know any better. So there's that awkward tension again with that moment that it's the costume design is so cool, but it's setting this very interesting power dynamic that is uncomfortable to watch sometimes, in this movie.
But her style is my favorite, even when she's just in her day clothes. Every time she goes to see Molly, she's just wearing her normal style. And I love, Ruth found all these amazing she got someone in LA to hand paint all of those silks and all those silk shirts and stuff that she was wearing. And they're all so special and unique. And you can tell that Oda Mae has a point of view with her style, with her look. And I love that continues through whatever she's wearing. Just a really cool way to create that character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Carl, I want to talk about Carl because I find him so incredibly sexy in this movie. Yeah. I really do. But also he is a dirtbag. Even without getting him killed, even without all of that stuff, just the scene that is cringe comedy, I think at its finest, is when he goes to Molly's apartment and is trying to seduce her.
Yes. Spills the coffee.
Oh my
God.
Even before that, he's taking off his coat and he's throwing his tie to the side and his shirt is open. And I'm like, okay, if you weren't such a dirtbag, this would be working for me. And then he spills his coffee on it. He's like, oh, I got to take off my shirt. She's like, do you want me to go wash that? Oh, no, it'll dry. Dude, it's coffee. That shit is going to leave a stain on your shirt. But no. Oh, I'm good. And then he's slowly, creeping towards her on the couch and getting closer. I'm like, you are so creepy.
So creepy. You're like, oh, you're so good looking, but my God, you don't know how to flirt at all.
No, it was so awkward to watch. It was so cringe. And I can't tell if she's if she's initially, just sort of writing it off or she knows what he's doing. Cause there's that push and pull where, they eventually do kiss and that's that moment and she pushes him back and stuff. But I'm like, dude, you are trying so hard. And at the beginning, she's having none of it. She's just like completely oblivious to it, it seems like.
She's like, my man just died. Like, she's not thinking about any of this. And you're like, my guy, like, if you did cause him to die, but you should have waited a little bit longer. Like, that's just no.
Just a bit.
No.
I mean, it's hard to tell how much time has passed, but it's like,
True.
It doesn't seem like a whole lot of time has passed since the funeral and whatnot.
Right. I wouldn't imagine there's that, you know, Patrick Swayze wouldn't stick around for that long without doing anything. One scene that sort of, you know, Carl's a horrible human from the very beginning is that elevator scene, which really hits different now with COVID.
Oh my God, doesn't it?
I was like,
so
I'm talking about the rash and, it's contagious and
he's coughing and
he's
touching.
coughing.
And
I was like, oh,
well, first of all, I was like, there's way too many people in that elevator. Like, it's so weird watching things like that would have been a normal scene, you know, and now it's like with COVID, it's like, you guys are way too close to each other. And then to do that, I was like, no.
It really set me off. I was like,
Sir.
oh no. Oh, my skin was crawling because now, you know, I'm an immunocompromised person due to all my prior health issues.
Right.
So it's like, I don't go anywhere near those situations anymore. So it now makes me like super like, oh no, that would be my nightmare if I was trapped in the elevator with that guy.
Trapped in the elevator with someone that's coughing on you, let alone, you know, joke or not joke. He is coughing. He is touching them. Like, it's like,
dude, no.
And they just sort of laugh it off. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, you wouldn't be laughing that off anymore. You'd be like on the ground.
1,000%. I was like, God.
One thing that I did notice on this watch, and it's something that like I don't think it's necessarily pronounced, but this movie reminds me of noir. I think there's a lot of noir to this film because like you have like this random murder and the investigator has to solve it, and eventually it leads straight up to the top, and there's double crossings, there's all that kind of stuff. And I would say that a subversion is that Carl is a homme fatale as opposed to a femme fatale, because he's double crossing, there's blackmail, there's con games, he's using his sexuality. Like, I think he's a homme fatale. I think he's one of the very few that we have.
I absolutely love that. I think that totally makes so much sense, especially with how it's filmed, the cinematography, the score. So many of the scenes feel almost black and white because they're so desaturated, especially the subway or the streets, and it might as well be in black and white.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. That's so interesting.
I love noir, and I love the aesthetics and like the sort of like plot details about, particularly the fact that like something so small ends up becoming like this big thing where his murder, which seems so random, it's a mugger that kills him, is actually this complicated plot to get $4 million transferred to some drug lord. Like,
right.
You know,
feels
what?
very much like a noir plot. Like, wait, what?
There's drug dealers involved. There's double crossing. There's a handsome, mysterious person that is at the center of it, manipulating everything. Like, it's noir. But it sent me on this like rabbit hole of like looking up like the trope is called "Who Done It to Me." The sort of like murdered person has to solve his own.
Ah, yes.
And I found one that is absolutely hilarious called You Can Never Tell. This is from 1951. And here's the plot synopsis. An ex-army dog inherits a fortune from his eccentric from his eccentric millionaire and is poisoned. And he asks the leader in heaven for animals to send him back to Earth as a human private investigator to solve his own murder.
Oh,
I'm sorry. What are you speaking? What are you saying to me?
I need to watch this movie immediately.
You Can Never Tell is what the movie's called. Can you believe that?
Someone was on drugs when they wrote that movie.
Absolutely. And then there was a reverse of this movie in 1980 called Oh Heavenly Dog with Chevy Chase, in which a murder detective must avenge his murder after he is reincarnated as a dog.
Okay, that person watched the other movie on drugs.
And it's like, what do we do? Let's do this. Let's do the reverse of it.
Get Chevy Chase. Done.
Movie made. But that's what that. So like I was looking because like The Crow obviously is similar to this in that a person gets murdered and has to avenge himself from beyond the death. But like that, seeing that movie and seeing it on the TV Tropes website of the Who Done It to Me TV trope, I was like, that is wild.
That's amazing. I need to go seek out this movie and watch it immediately.
I definitely want to.
Well, so I'm glad you brought up noir, because I wanted to bring up the fact that this is like a rare urban haunting movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is a movie about ghost haunting subway cars.
Mm-hmm.
Like, ghost stories are so much about like big haunted houses in the middle of nowhere, like people who died hundreds of years ago. Like, it's always those kinds of hauntings. But this is a rare example of urban contemporary spaces being haunted by ghosts. That, again, we don't see a lot. Like, and this makes, like, I thought a lot about this with the angry train ghost, which fucking set me, like, that made me jump and set me on edge.
Scary.
Because you just think of the subway as something that's like, yeah, there's weirdos on the subway, but it's not haunted. But then you see this, and there's a ghost who claims the car of a subway car. And, all of these buildings and hospitals have ghosts just hanging out in them. And I think it's just interesting that we have this kind of movie where urban spaces are not safe from the dead.
Right.
I think there's always this illusion of safety in the city from the supernatural because it's a city. And this movie kind of just goes against that, especially because people are taken away by demons in the middle of the street. With the mugger gets just like fucking taken by a demon in the middle of the goddamn New York street. I'm like, yep, you know what? Great. I love that. So I thought that was just a really interesting, another inversion of a kind of a ghost story that you're used to seeing.
Definitely. And also seeing the ghost movie from the ghost perspective, which we like very rarely get. And so I thought, that coupled with the urban spaces, it's such an unusual movie, because I think that's why it was the highest grossing movie of 1990, is no one had ever seen anything like that before. Which to me, it's insane that was the highest grossing movie of 90. I mean, I love this movie, but what?
It's wild. It's wild to think, because this movie is wild to me. I mean, maybe because it's hitting so many different quadrants, like the horror fans might be going to see it and it's a sweeping room. I don't know, but that is a wild moment. But I did want to stick with the subway ghost for a moment, because Vincent Schiavelli, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He's a fantastic character actor, was a fantastic character actor, but he is so good in this as being like, just like, he's terrifying. Cause I forgot that there is someone that sees him, and all of a sudden he gets up and he's like charging him and throwing him through the train, and it's like you get a little tiny fight scene. But then you also a little bit later get the weirdest inversion of like the Yoda teaching Luke how to like use his powers, where like he's basically the Yoda character showing him how to use his mental, force type powers to move things. And I was just laughing at how silly it was, but also how important it was to the plot.
So he's so scary, so important to the plot. And then the last time you see him, it's very also sad. You go through quite the roller coaster where you're terrified of him when you first meet him. Then you're sort of like, oh, this guy, he just is really angry, but look at him. Mm-hmm. He's got the skill and he's teaching our hero, what he needs to learn. But then he gets paranoid and runs on the train again. So he goes through so many different emotions.
Well, it almost seems like he forgets that he was talking to this guy, because he's like, "Who are you?" All of a sudden, he's like, and he wants to get a drag from a cigarette, and he can't like physically do that. So there's like, again, that sense of melancholy of like him being stuck here, and you don't know how long he's been stuck here. And he even says like, "Well, they pushed me," and he says that, but then the last thing he does is he goes and jumps into the train, and it's like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and how long has he been stuck there, and is his memory accurate? And his whole story is extraordinarily sad. I mean, this whole movie, again, how is this the highest grossing movie? It is, well, I mean, plenty of high grossing movies are extremely sad. But this movie
is sexy.
Yes,
it is sad and scary.
It's everything.
Like,
it's funny.
I wrote that down. It's funny. Like,
it's got everything.
Everyone's really hot in it. it's got steamy sex in it. It's got this sad romance that you can't help but root for in it. There's scary elements to it. It really does got it all. It's quite I was quite impressed with how it balances everything. Like, it's definitely like really cheesy, but I think that works for this movie. Like, I was like, this movie is so cheesy, but it's creepy too, and I appreciate how well everything is kind of balanced in this movie that like probably shouldn't work, but it does.
It totally does. I love it. I love this movie. It's phenomenal. Again, I make a lot of movies that are multi-genre that sort of span lots of different feelings, and it always keeps you on your toes, and it's always exciting because you don't know where it's going to go next, and you know, feeling all the different emotions in one movie is pretty exciting.
The most surprising thing for me is realizing on this watch that this was directed by Jerry Zucker, who was part of the ZAZ team of directors, Jerry Zucker, Jim Abrahams, and David Zucker, who did things like Airplane, Top Secret, The Naked Gun, the Kentucky Fried Movie.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
He would eventually go on to direct Rat Race. So this is the director of this movie, is known for those Leslie Nielsen movies for a lot of them. And it was written by the guy that wrote Jacob's Ladder. Bruce Joel Rubin.
What?
Yeah, that came out the same year, right?
I believe so. The same year, yeah. He would eventually also write Deep Impact as well.
Oh, Deep Impact.
So, what a mashing of like, so what I did find out is that Zucker did lighten up the script considerably. He added humor, and he wanted to focus on a more moral type aesthetic. So like, evil acts get retribution, and so I'm really curious. I would really be curious to see what the original script looked like, because I have a feeling it was a bunch darker and maybe more in the same vein of like Jacob's Ladder in terms of like being more seedy and that kind of stuff. Because it does sound like they together made it a little bit more family friendly, shall we say? Which
I think was the good, smart idea. I think in one of the original drafts, Oda Mae died. I'm like, you can't kill Oda Mae.
Oh wow!
Which would have been a whole different
even
movie.
Fucking worse for this movie.
Seriously, you can't kill her.
Dynamics on top of
bad. Just would have been very bad.
Ew.
But speaking, so you had also mentioned, that there was the Broadway musical, but I also found out when I was looking on Bruce Joel Rubin's IMDb page that there is a remake of this movie from Japan.
Really?
Yes. There is a Japanese remake of this film.
Amazing.
And I really kind of want to watch it.
Oh, definitely. 1,000%.
I do too. That sounds incredible.
I need to seek that out as well. I now have so many more things to add to my watch list.
I'm curious though, Whitney, do you believe in ghosts?
I don't. I'm one of those atheists who's very much a science-based person. I don't. I mean, I don't really know 100%. I can't determine like this is exactly how the world works or this or that, but I'm open to them existing maybe, but I've seen no evidence. I'm very much, even though I'm not in science anymore, I'm very much have a science foundation to my life. So if I don't have proof, I don't believe.
That's the way I am too, and I know Mary Beth believes in all the supernatural oogie boogie.
I do.
Awesome. I
do. And it's so weird too, because it's like I'm not a religious person. Like I don't believe in like God. I don't know what I believe, but I'm not like a religious person. So it's not like from like there's a God and a Jesus kind of scenario, but it's like there's something else out. Like to me, it's like interdimensional weirdness, and I sound like a tin hat wearing person when I talk about it like that. But I do believe I unapologetically believe in ghosts. Mm-hmm.
No, I love that. I think that's awesome.
You can fool me. If you tell me a ghost story, I'll believe it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, you're like
they're great.
1,000%.
You tell me a ghost story. Exactly. You tell me a ghost story. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That happened for real.
I love ghosts because I get to make them, like, We Have a Ghost, my upcoming movie with Chris Landon. That again is one of the main characters is a ghost. And so there's a lot of through lines there with this ghost movie.
Yeah.
Is that you have a main character from the ghost point of view. So that was very fun to do.
This movie made me realize I would have sex with a
Yeah,
ghost.
1,000%. I mean, if it looked like
it was Patrick Swayze.
1,000%. He was it for me.
me too.
I remember I watched Dirty Dancing, young too. And, Patrick Swayze was it. Like the bad boy.
Oh, Patrick Swayze.
A tender lover.
Yeah. He was having a time in the late 80s, early 90s with like Dirty Dancing, Roadhouse, Ghost, Point Break.
Point Break.
From a Roadhouse.
It's like my favorite actors growing up. It's like Harrison Ford, Patrick Swayze, and Keanu Reeves.
Keanu.
Incredible.
Love Keanu. So Point Break, I was like, yes.
It's funny because like I remember wanting to watch Dirty Dancing as a kid. My parents wouldn't let me watch it, I think, because of the title. And that was also the title, the reason why I wanted to watch it, because I was like, ooh, this sounds sexy.
You're like, give me that Dirty Dancing, please.
Yeah. Well, it's such an evocative cover too with, her, well, I guess like, I'm trying to remember. I think there was like, because I'm looking at it on IMDb and that's not the cover I remember, but I thought there was like a cover of like, what's her name? Jennifer Grey, like on her hands and knees. And
oh yeah. They're doing the like baby. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But like, yeah, I never got to see that until I was in, I think either high school or college was when I first saw that movie. So I missed out on a whole lot of like his
whole
prime.
Bunch of Patrick Swayze.
This was I think this was the only movie of his that I saw it when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Was actually Ghost.
Was Ghost. Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he's, it's one of his best performances. He's so excellent in this. Yeah. And I think that was one of the things that drew him to this movie. Is so different from Roadhouse and Point Break and, all of those other action movies he was doing. He didn't want to get pigeonholed, which I totally get.
Right. Yeah.
Well, do we want to start wrapping up and start moving towards giving this our rating out of 5?
Yes. So before we do give our ratings for this, though, rewatching it, does this movie still scare you, or did it bring you back to being a child again, or is it not as scary as it used to be?
It's definitely not as scary as it used to be, but there were moments that brought me back to when I first watched it as a kid, and I think most movies do that to me. If I watched it when I was really young, I still think of how it made me feel when I first watched it. And so watching those demons again, I remembered the feeling, but it felt very different this time. But I just remember how special the design, and I was able to look at it more as an adult perspective. But yeah, it was fun to revisit the kid in me watching that VHS from McDonald's years ago.
I honestly, I completely even forgot that was a thing. And when you said that, it like literally like a memory was unlocked in my mind. Like what? I forgot about that. What a wild time.
So strange. The 90s,
Well, Terry, let's start rating this sucker out of 5. How many pieces of phallic pottery out of 5 do you give Ghost, Terry?
I don't have any nostalgia towards this, like I said, because I remember being bored to tears through most of this as a kid. And then like being like instantly excited at the very end. And then also thinking that ditto was a word for love. So like, I don't really have any nostalgic attachment to this film. So watching it as an adult, it was such a weird experience because I remembered virtually nothing about the film, but I fell in love with it a whole lot more. I think we talked about the most problematic aspect of it and that kind of like, but even with that, I think this is such a well-made movie that hits so many different emotional quadrants that just like is sad and funny and sexy and a little scary in spots. And I think it's so well acted. I think Whoopi Goldberg is a star, and I am so glad that she was in this because it really helped, create her career. So like, there's a whole lot to love in this. So I'm going to give it, I think, 4 pieces of phallic pottery out of 5. I think this movie is really good. And it's, as you said, Whitney, it's surprising that this was like the biggest box office hit of that year. It's wild to me, but I'm going to stick with 4. What about you, Mary Beth?
I'm also going to give it 4 pieces of phallic pottery. I was obviously knew about this movie. I had seen it at some point, remembered nothing, and rewatching it today, I was just so struck with how we've talked about how it straddles so many different genres and so many different stories. And, you know, when I first saw it over 2 hours, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, what could be happening in this movie for 2 hours? And I was compelled the full 2 hours. So you know what? Like, good for them for making me be like, hey, actually those 2 hours and 7 minutes were in fact worth it. It wasn't like, you know, a slog. It all kind of comes together into this really...
It's paced really well.
Yeah, it comes together in this like wild, sad, sexy, scary, thrilling package that is just like, I think to be very indicative of like that era of of like very good filmmaking, of just kind of everything you could want. And it's just a delicious cinematic treat. So I'm going to go with 4. And then Whitney, you have the final word. How many pieces of phallic pottery out of 5 do you give Ghost?
I think I'm definitely going to go with 4.5, so nearly the full amount of pottery. Like both of you said, this movie is really special, and rewatching it again, it's been over a decade since I've seen it, and I realize now how much this movie was a foundation to the path that set me on making movies and making horror movies, and you know, how much the design aspect was so strong in this movie, and how it blended all these genres together, which is one of my favorite type of scripts to do. And I see so much of this movie mirrored in my life now. And so it's just really special to me to, you know, rewatch it and see how much this movie probably did help change the course of my life. So I'm very grateful for it.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much, Whitney, for joining us to talk about the movie and plowing through all of our internet issues. We appreciate it. Where can our listeners find you online, and what do you have coming up that you can share or talk about?
I am on Instagram at WAA Costume Design, and I'm on Twitter at Whitney A. Adams. And coming up later this year, we don't have a release date yet, but Christopher Landon's movie, We Have a Ghost, that I costume designed, is coming out. And it was a whole bunch of fun to make. It's a family adventure, so it's not horror, but it involves a ghost. And look for that on Netflix very soon.
Hell yeah. So, listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with Ghost? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I'm at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McGailey Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. And if you want more of us talking, you can subscribe to our newly launched Patreon.
Please and thank you. Thank you to Eric Parr for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.